These next two change makers are Diane Katakowski and Jenn Ryan, who are SLPs and oversee the professional development for Oakland District schools in Michigan. There's about 400 SLPs, and Diane and Jenn are committed to ensuring that the evaluations are evidence-based and culturally and linguistically responsive. They also think about adult learning, so they think about how to make sure there's participation, discussion, practice, and coaching. So here's how they've made changes in their school district.
Greetings from Oakland Schools, an intermediate school district serving almost 175,000 students in Michigan. My name is Diane Katakowski, and I am here with my colleague, Jennifer Ryan. We are both speech language pathologists who serve as consultants for over 400 incredible school SLPs employed in our local districts. We are excited to share with you our professional learning and capacity building model for high quality speech and language evaluations. Oakland County is located in southeastern Michigan, and as of the 2020 census, it is the second most populous county in our state. As a regional service agency, we are made up of 28 local school districts, 22 public school academies, and 87 non-publics. Our local school SLPs collectively support about 19,000 students with IEPs, and they work across all levels from birth to age 26 in our state. So Jenn and I have the privilege of facilitating and sustaining professional learning for our school SLPs who work across ASHA's 4 workload areas to support not just kiddos with IEPs, but also students at risk for learning difficulties. Our professional learning content is grounded in the roles and responsibilities of school SLPs, using systems of support as part of prevention and referral procedures, grounding eligibility decision-making in IDEA's 3-question litmus test. Jen's going to talk about that in just a little bit. And providing specially designed instruction that is educationally relevant and ensures learning acceleration. Now, a review of the literature on adult learning and systems change illustrates how important attending to the compelling why for professional learning can be. Jenn and I frame our professional learning supports by starting with our own compelling why. Why are we engaging in this work? What is our vision of the work of the school SLP? At Oakland Schools, our vision for SLP professional learning supports is really grounded in the critical role that SLPs play in ensuring learner engagement and acceleration. The vision you see on the screen here drives the professional learning content that we develop and provide. But in order for SLPs to put the professional learning into practice, Jenn and I have learned that we have to go beyond developing knowledge and skill. We must also empower our SLPs to use what they learn. They have to feel confident about their informed clinical judgment, their professional expertise, and the published research as they engage in decision-making. When it comes to high-quality, culturally responsive speech and language evaluations, Dr. Crowley already highlighted the research showing that many SLPs just don't have the time to read current research, to learn an updated assessment practice, or to forge a new local policy in their district around evaluations. So Jenn and I must arm SLPs with knowledge, skills, and confidence to engage in compliant, ethical, valid, and reliable assessment practices through our professional learning supports. In addition to our vision, Jenn and I use data to inform our professional learning content and framework. And based on our state's public data platform, which is called myschooldata.org, you can see that in our county, specific learning disability, speech language impairment, and autism are very commonly identified as the primary disability for students with IEPs. In the year shown here, these 3 areas represented 65% of all IEPs in the county. Given these 3 areas of eligibility alone, as well as eligibility areas that involve underlying or co-occurring communication delay, SLPs are working as primary interventionist and case coordinator for at least 25 to 65% of students with IEPs in Oakland County. So the bottom line is SLPs work with the majority of students with IEPs in any district in our county. SLPs are change agents that can work across the entire educational system to improve outcomes when it comes to eligibility, decision-making, and high-quality evaluations. Now, another data source that compels our professional learning around high-quality evaluations is our IEP identification patterns for English learners. Anyone performing evaluations of English learners and doing it well understands that the key to validly, reliably teasing out difference from disorder from gap is to let go of our grasp on static, one-shot, culturally biased assessment practices and incorporate dynamic assessment practices that honor a child's learning context and lived experience. In Oakland County, we have worked really hard across the past 10 years or so to incorporate dynamic assessment practices in order to decrease over and under identification of English learners. As of this past school year, about 50% of our local districts are identifying English learners and monolingual English speakers as needing IEPs at about the same rate. That's exactly what we want. We have about 20% of our locals who are under identifying our English learners, and we have about 30% of our schools that are over identifying. So we still have work to do. And finally, our local stakeholder data confirms what Dr. Crowley shared. Long-standing evaluation problems persist. Over-reliance on norm-referenced static tests, lack of dynamic assessments, duplication of testing areas, and lack of integration of results compelled Jen and I to change our model for professional learning and capacity building. So Jen and I are working to really build a professional learning model that changes the narrative of, well, I was never taught how to incorporate dynamic assessment practices that sit outside of published norm reference tools, or I don't have time to learn new assessment practices. So to do this well, Jen and I have really had to shift our model of professional learning. Historically, our organization offered professional development that used one-size-fits-all introductory level seat time models. The problem was that sit and get rarely led to application or empowerment for our SLPs. So we rely on the work of Joyce and Showers around the learning pyramid, and we see that at most, passive teaching methods lead to retention of really no more than about 30% of the learning content, whereas participatory teaching methods that focus on discussion, practice, coaching, they can lead to retention of up to 90% of the content. And since our school SLPs really have no time to waste, Jen and I have created a framework for implementation that builds knowledge and skills as well as intentionally builds transfer to everyday application, so that our SLPs can work smarter and not harder when they engage in their evaluation practices. Our professional learning framework uses a tiered system of support for SLPs that begins with foundational, common, shared learning for all. Foundational learning content really stays relatively similar every academic year because it's designed to cover the broad range of workload roles and responsibilities common to school SLPs. For SLPs looking for support with implementation of that foundational learning, we offer more intensive implementation support sessions across the year. These sessions are hour-long, virtual, and they're tailored to a specific foundational learning content. They involve connecting SLPs across the county who share a similar passion or a priority for applying what they learned to their daily routine. Now, not all SLPs who participate in foundational learning want or need implementation support, but these are available for the some SLPs who do want practice and discussion with their peers. And then finally, we offer some coaching and technical assistance for very few people who need the most intensive support or practice. But what we have found when it comes to evaluation practices, our implementation support sessions have been really instrumental in getting SLPs to hone hone their practice, incorporate dynamic practices, and live into more culturally responsive ethical assessment practices. Our tiered model, especially around evaluations, allows us to help build the capacity of our SLPs so that they have the knowledge, skills, and confidence to practice at the top of their license. And now Jen's going to spend the rest of our time highlighting our capacity building model.
Great, thanks, Diane. As Diane mentioned, our foundational learning lays the groundwork for realizing our vision to empower SLPs to use their clinical informed judgment and expertise in their evidence-based practice. The professional learning session that we wanted to highlight is our foundational learning called Evaluation of SLI. In this half-day session that we offer each year, SLPs explore evidence-based practice around evaluation, but also the legal requirements outlined through IDEA and our Michigan special education rules and regulations. And all of these requirements and best practice recommendations are grounded in our ASHA Code of Ethics. In this professional learning experience, we provide tools that help SLPs engage in ethical evaluation practices that not only comply with state and federal guidelines, but also maintain positive relationships with families and education partners. SLPs who attend this session share that the tools and the key concepts we explore empower them to use their clinical judgment to make SLI eligibility decisions and to communicate those decisions clearly. There are 3 key concepts for change that this foundational learning aims to investigate. The first is what we call the 3QLT, or the 3-question litmus test. These are the 3 questions that require a yes answer in order to find a child eligible for special education under IDEA. Is there a disability? Does the disability impact performance in or access to general education? And does the student require specially designed instruction? In our foundational learning, we explored not only these 3 questions, but a heuristic or tool that supports SLPs as they use evidence-based assessment practices to make those decisions. The second key concept for change that we explore in this professional learning session is the use of dynamic assessment and a shift away from static, culturally biased assessment practices. It's a focus on these 2 key concepts, the 3-question litmus test and dynamic assessment, that SLPs report leads them to the 3rd key concept for change, and that is feeling empowered to use their informed clinical opinion. But informed clinical opinion doesn't develop overnight, and neither does a feeling of being empowered to use it. No one leaves their clinical fellowship year with loads of informed clinical opinion. And similarly, if we have relied on norm reference standardized tests to make all eligibility decisions till now, trusting your clinical opinion can be tentative at first. So we have found that a few things support that growth. First are those decision-making heuristics like the 3-question litmus test. We've also found that practicing elevator speeches or other scripts about culturally responsive dynamic practices can be helpful. And finally, examples of evaluation plans or reports that clearly illustrate these practices, these dynamic practices, can make the new ideas come together more clearly. But foundational learning opportunities are often not sufficient for system-wide change. And for that reason, we offer implementation supports across the topics of our foundational content, including SLI eligibility and evaluation practices. We know that applying new innovation requires incremental progress over time and empowerment that the change is possible. One tool we use to support SLPs as they innovate their own clinical practice is an implementation progress map or an innovation configuration. With this tool, SLPs define their steps along the way to full application of new practice. You can see in this example that the end goal of fully incorporating dynamic assessment in SLI evaluations is broken down into the actionable steps it will take to get there. It is by honoring these small steps and reflecting on our practice regularly that we are able to make real change. We hope that it's been helpful for you to consider the aspects of our professional learning continuum that support SLPs as they grow in their use of evidence-based practice. Thank you so much for your time. Feel free to email us with any questions or comments.
This video and a number of others showing our change makers will go together to form an online course available at leadersproject.org that will also be offered for ASHA CEUs. It will be free, and you will meet your ethical and culturally responsive requirements.